Chapter 3 Inception Art Online Reloaded. You may think that between delirious one-shots, an incoherent setting, and insane restrictions, the surprises are over. Poor things. How naive. Ingenuous. You almost make me believe there's hope for mankind. For you see, the main gimmick of the campaign is that we are psychonauts. For those of you who played the homonym video game, well, it's basically that, one day, a mysterious old man gifted us special goggles, and a bowl linked to said goggles. When we put the bowl on someone's sleeping head, thanks to the goggles, we can enter in his/her dream world. So, in this low magic, horror, investigative campaign, where monsters are relegated to legends, and if you believe in magic, you're treated as an insane individual, 4 fellas going around with super eyewear that allows them to jump into someone else's dreamscape are considered perfectly normal. No, wait, we're even notorious for that. It is one of the mandatory aspects of the background. Essentially, the various dream worlds will be the equivalent of your usual dungeons in a normal campaign. I bet someone could appreciate the idea of being a psychonaut, but just like it was for the characters, the builds, and the backgrounds, a new swindle is awaiting us. Described in the 26-page PDF provided by the DM, here for you how the goggles, the bowl, and relative dream world work. Normally, our characters will help other people by entering into their heads thanks to the goggles, to solve any psychological trauma they might have. In order to enter the dream world, you need to place the bowl on their head while they're sleeping. If the person is in a coma, that's easy stuff. If the person is hostile, you need to knock him out with non-lethal damage, possibly bound the subject, and finally put the bowl on his head. May I remind you, good campaign, level 1, no spells/abilities for support. If the bowl gets destroyed, damaged, or lost, the goggles are then unusable, since no one of us know how they work, how to repair them, or where to find a new bowl. In essence, game over. To be honest, the DM did specify there's a way to use the goggles without the bowl, but we never discovered anything about it. The dream world is a combination between a lucid dream, a generic dream, that individual conscience, and his mental/psychological traumas. Everything can happen. You could potentially enter in the dream of a young farmer traumatized by the loss of his parents during a war, but how actually this will play out in the dream world is based on the farmer's unconscious, his psyche, and how the DM will brew everything up. You could have to face an army of shadow men, or maybe a gargantuan dragon representing war itself. Or maybe you will have to protect the child version of the farmer by fending off some raging creatures. Not only you cannot know in advance, but also you cannot deduce it, or neither use some spell to foresee it. They're banned. Consequently, you cannot properly prepare in advance for the challenge. In other words, you will be completely in the dark, even if you are the reincarnation of Carl Gustav Jung. Once the goggles are activated, you cannot exit the dream world until the trauma of the individual with the bowl is resolved. As I said, the trauma and how it presents, and also the resolution, is completely at discretion of the DM. Just like in Sword Art Online, once you enter the virtual world, you cannot escape it until you finish the game. Think about entering a dungeon, the entrance of which will permanently be sealed once you stepped in, and you don't know where or if even exists a way out. At level 1, low magic, and it will be like this every time. Just like for Sword Art Online, Matrix, or Inception, dying in the dream world means dying in the real world. Just like Sword Art Online, Matrix, or Inception, when you are in someone else's dream mind, your body lies helpless in the real world. Difference being, in those movies, there's always someone who watches over your body while you are in the virtual world. Here, clearly known. If, while we're linked in the dream world, a rascal happens to pass and robs, kidnaps, or kills us, we can't do anything to avoid it. Hell, we wouldn't even notice until it's too late. Well, one of the players could stay out of the dream world to guard us, but this also means that player would just come to session to do nothing while the rest of the party plays the adventure/dungeon/dream world. And should a threat arise, hardly he would be able to do anything about it alone, since we're level 1. Dream worlds have their rules, always changing and shifting. This includes gravity, setting, population, dangers, anything. You could find yourself in an underwater city where characters could breathe water but cannot speak, or cast spells with verbal components. Maybe you will land in an active volcano infested by terrifying demons. Or maybe visit a village where gravity goes from overwhelming to inexistent in a blink of an eye. Anything goes. It's almost like an extraplanar journey to a plane of existence, completely at random every time. A plane you cannot escape of. Should I remember again? Level 1, low magic. Even time flows differently, and at random in dream worlds. Few hours in the dream, maybe few seconds in the real world, or months. As I already mentioned, the body of the characters stay in the real world, so if you're adventuring through dreamscapes while in the real world weeks are passing, you will die of starvation. And once again, you cannot exit to replenish until you're done with the adventure. Normally, one will solve with a ring of sustenance or similar, but I have to repeat myself. Level 1, low magic. Since the dream worlds are actually not non-real dreamscapes, nothing you might find in there can be brought out in the real world. The opposite, however, works. To be clear, if in the dream world you find a 2,000 gold treasure, that's totally fictitious. But if you fire 5 arrows, or the fighter loses his sword, when you finally wake up, the 5 arrows and the sword will be lost forever. So to recap, in this level 1 campaign, that will remain at this level for too much time, low magic, with so many limitations and restrictions to the characters, and where only the core rulebook is allowed, your typical adventure/dungeon will consist in an extraplanar journey completely at blind, where dangers, enemies, and objectives are totally unknown, incoherent, and at random. An adventurer where you have no way to properly prepare for, where even if you were clairvoyant in real, you wouldn't find the equipment you need, and even if you did, you wouldn't be able to afford it. An adventure from which you could not back down. You would not know what to do in order to complete it, and with an undefined time limit given by the possible different time flow, where every resource you will, logically, be consumed, but every treasure you might find is bogus. Thus, you wouldn't even reimburse the travel expenses. An adventure that best case scenario begins by mentally abusing a comatose individual, but in the most probable scenario, the coma will be initiated by a beating. All of this while your bodies lie completely helpless and at the mercy of a random passerby. Funny thing, now that I think about it, even a single one of those factors would be potentially lethal. It would make hesitant even a party of medium high level characters. Now imagine combining all together. And once again, I remind you that all of what you read until now is not a collection of collected follies I gathered during the campaign, but merely a recap of the 26-paged PDF the DM gave us, which make you notice a small detail. The campaign is not yet started. Small interlude. While halfway on translating this stuff, after rereading and rewriting the entire story, I now fully realize the amount of insanities I've gathered during those months. And to my surprise, I also realize how many things I left out. From the spontaneous self-combustion of NPCs we weren't supposed to talk to magic items that suddenly stopped working because the DM forgot about them, to the Boilermen, suicidal enemies, maps so senseless that we would put MC Escher to shame. During those sessions, I had a small notebook that I used as a journal, in the vain hope of noting the various clues we would have supposedly collected, since we were allegedly playing an investigative campaign. But I ended up noting only the follies we faced, and only 1/3 of those will appear below. Just to give you an idea of what didn't make the cut, do you know how priceless are rerolls in D20 system? Well, in some sessions, my teammates got unlucky streaks of dice rolls. and because of that, we were on verge of wiping. Normally, you would make use of your abilities /feats /builds /items to get out of problems. But since we were practically naked, with no special abilities and half of the core rulebook banned, we were doomed every other day. In those moments, one of my party members would kindly ask the DM, "Can I just re-roll this attack roll?" And the DM, knowing full well that we would be dead by the end of the next round if he did nothing, simply allowed them to re-roll the dice for free. Meanwhile, I had to make the DM, beat him at Crash Team Racing twice, and play with him at Call of Cthulhu board game, almost single-handedly beating the blasphemous alchemy episode, to be allowed to use the treat deadly wounds option of the heal skill once. Continue in part 2. At this point in this very long post, I can only assume that the DM wants to fuck everyone over. It has to be the only option at this point. There are so many different bands that are just crazy, which are in the chapter 2, and they don't make sense. And then here in chapter 3, it's crazy to find out that the DM was throwing them in an area where they could literally die in 2 different places. They could die without even knowing it. Of course, they'd know it after the fact, but they'd have no way of helping themselves in the other world. Especially at level 1, and they are right, the higher levels probably wouldn't really care for this type of way of doing it either. But this concludes part 1, and let me know if you want me to continue to part 2. There are 3 posts or so total from what I remember. And I do want to clarify that I understand that I make mistakes, and but I like to keep them in because I grew up believing I had to be perfect, and you know what? I don't. I'm human. I'm gonna make mistakes, and I hope you all understand that. Another thing, I am just getting over being sick, so my voice is a little bit gruff, and it may be in the next few videos. But let me know what you think, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.